Hey, good morning, guys. I am going to be doing the Oboe Concerto, Movement 1. It's in C major, and yeah. So, quick historical context of this piece. It was composed in 1777, and it was composed for oboist Giuseppe Ferlendis. Mozart was 21 when he wrote this, and it was written in the classical period. And in 1778, it was written or reworked for flute in D major. So a little bit about the concerto. It is 3 movements. It is broken down to 5 themes throughout. So the first movement we have Allegro aperto, which is cheerful and open. The second movement is Adagio non troppo, slowly, not too much. And the third movement is Rondo, which is Allegretto and cheerful. So it is in concerto sonata form, and there are no dynamics scored. So a couple reasons why I think this might be is we are transitioning from the end of the Baroque period, which ended in 1750, and we know in the Baroque period they used very little or no dynamics when composing music. It was all up to the musician to just kind of feel what was right. So the other reason why I think this might be is Mozart had an affinity for learning local compositional and performance styles when he was traveling. And from 1777 to 1780, we know he was doing quite a bit of traveling. So he started out in Salzburg, went through Munich, Augsburg, Mannheim, and Paris, just in those 3 years. So a little bit more about Mozart's activity. As I mentioned before, he was doing quite a bit of travel during those 3 years. Salzburg, Munich, Augsburg, Mannheim, Paris, and back to Salzburg. So during his travels, one of the more important compositions of his that he wrote was Symphony Number 31 in D major, which a lot of people call the Paris Symphony because it was, I believe it was written there, and it was also very popular there. So, major events. 1777, Mozart was released from his position as concertmaster. Throughout their travels looking for opportunities, through Munich and Augsburg, they ended up staying with family, and when they got to Mannheim, Mozart fell in love with Aloysia Weber, who was a soprano daughter of a music copyist. And if you know anything about the Weber family, Constanza, which actually ended up being Mozart's wife, was Aloysia's sister. So it's kind of scandalous there. I don't know. That kind of surprised me when I read that they were sisters. So moving on from that, towards the end of Mozart's travel, when he ended up in Paris, his mother became very ill and she passed away. So we know from letters that Mozart's father convinced him to come back home to Salzburg in 1780. So a little about concerto sonata form. We have a mix of sonata form and ritornello form. Ritornello form is widely used in Baroque music. So ritornello form is basically differentiated sections between large group and the soloist performing. So just back and forth between those two. And then sonata form, we know, is listed here. We have the exposition, and what's different about concerto sonata form is that there is a double exposition, but otherwise I believe it's exactly the same. So the exposition, development, recapitulation, cadenza, and the coda. So with the double exposition, the exposition plays the main themes with just the orchestra. And the second time, the soloist enters on top of the orchestra. So with this concerto, we have 6 main sections. Those are the exposition, double exposition, development, recapitulation, cadenza, and the coda. So I've listed the bars and also the themes that are present within each section. So starting at the exposition, bars 1 through 31 were introduced to themes A, B, and C. And with the double exposition, It's bars 32 through 49, and we only hear the A theme restated. There is about 7 bars, I believe, of transitional material into the development section, so that's why I've just listed that as the A section, or the A theme, I'm sorry. So for the development, we have bars 50 through 105, and we hear the introduction of 2 new themes. These are the D and the E themes, and then we hear development on the themes of B and C. So then we come down here and we're at the recapitulation at bars 106 to 177. And here we hear almost every single theme that we've heard throughout the previous 3 sections, except for the C theme. And then something interesting to note about the recapitulation, typically we hear the A theme stated right at the recapitulation, but I've determined that the D theme is actually part of the D theme starts the recapitulation, excuse me. So I think maybe that's just Mozart's, he's just doing something different. It will make sense when you hear it because that, it makes sense during the analysis part of it. So that's why I've listed the D theme as part of the beginning of the recapitulation. So then once we get through the recapitulation, we have the cadenza, which is bar 178. So here we hear the soloist do their solo, and then at the end we hear the trill, leading us into the coda, and where we have the terminative material for the movement. So for the A theme, we have an asymmetrical period. It's 5 plus 2 plus 2, and it's followed by a 2-bar link. So I'm going to play that real quick. Here's a 2-bar link. Okay, and we go right into the B theme. So here you can see that I've included the 2-bar link, and we begin the B theme on a half cadence. Okay, so we heard that 2-bar link at the end, and now we are entering the C theme. So if you look at a diagram of the sonata form, or I believe the concerto sonata form, sorry, you'll see that the C theme is a lot of times labeled as the closing theme for that main section. I've decided to just label it as the C theme because it comes back later on in the movement. So, excuse me. We got an asymmetrical period at 2 plus 4, and then once the C theme is over, we go right back into the double exposition. So just a quick note before I move on to the next slide. The C theme sounded to me like it started here where we have the ascending 16th notes and the 8th notes here, but it also sounds like it could have started on the bar 27 where we have the descending 8th notes and then followed by a dotted 8th, 16th. Da, 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 da. It sounds like it could start there, but this really felt like it, the previous bar really felt like it was part of that phrase, so I decided to include that. Somebody else might do it differently, but that's just how I did it. Okay, So we're here at the double exposition. We're going to hear the A theme again, and the soloist is trilling and entering on the end of beat 1. So one thing to pay attention to, this form, or this figure right here, we have the 8th note followed by a dotted 8th, followed by, or tied to, 2 32nd notes. So this is something we're going to hear developed upon in the development section, so keep that figure in mind. So for the double exposition, we have the A theme restated, 5 plus 2 plus 2. We have 9 bars of transitional material, and that's 2 plus 4 plus 3. So we have the 3-bar phrase. Okay, so again, with this piece, the movements tend to transition pretty quickly between each other. Sometimes there's not even a link to time together. All right, so we are at the development section now. So the double exposition goes by pretty quick because we just hear that first A theme. So about the development section, we're going to hear 2 new themes introduced. Those are the D and E themes. And then after we hear those themes, the B and C themes are just going to be developed upon. So I'm just going to play the D and E themes because we've already heard the B and C themes. And the D theme is asymmetrical. So we have 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2. And then quick before I play the video, just look here at this highlighted section. I have them all highlighted. That's the same figure that we heard, excuse me. That's the same figure that we heard at the beginning of the double exposition where the soloist enters. So this tells me that it's developing on that theme, and we're going to hear some new material. Okay, and right into the E theme, where we are briefly venturing into a minor key. So, and I haven't listed that, but you'll be able to hear it. So right here, I've shown that we are transitioning to G. So we see F sharps present, and then down here, I've highlighted the D chords because those are signaling to me that we're about to have a cadence into a new key. So let's listen to that. Sitting on that D chord. So there's our cadence onto G. So then after this, we'll hear the B and C themes. Well, after this, the B and C themes are developed. I'm not going to play that because time constraints, but just so you know what's happening during the development section, I'll just go over it one more time. So we heard the D theme, we just heard the E theme, and then the B and C themes are going to be developed, and then we are going to go right into the recapitulation on the D theme. So we have the return of the D, A, E, and B themes. The D theme is restated in G major, but immediately begins transitioning back into the key of C, which is why I've decided to include it as the beginning of the recapitulation. So a couple things, the presence of F naturals signals that we are about to change, and there are cadences throughout. So second part of the recapitulation slide, the restatement of the A theme and modulation of back to C. So the D theme, we start the transition to C, but the A theme is really where we're fully back into C, and you can hear that. And here we've got the 5/7 onto the C chord. That's pretty strong to me that, it's going to be C major. So this video, I've decided to start at the D theme at the beginning of the recapitulation, just so you can hear that full transition and modulation. Here we're transitioning. And right back into C. Okay, then we have just a tiny bit of developmental material. Okay, so once we go through the entire recapitulation, we have a short interpolation after the D theme is restated. So we hear the D theme twice in the recapitulation, at the beginning and then at the end. So after we hear that second D theme restatement, we have a 4-bar interpolation into the cadenza. So then once we hear that, the cadenza will begin bar 178, and we'll hear the soloist go off. He'll do a trill, and that is a perfect authentic cadence right into the coda and our terminative material, and that will bring the piece to a close. Okay, I'm just going to pause for one sec. One thing that I thought was super cool watching this video is if you pay attention to the performers in the back, you can watch their faces just kind of brighten up with amazement as the soloist goes off. Francois Lelutz is an incredible oboist. I just wanted to point that out before I play it so you can see how cool that moment is. Another thing I want you to pay attention to is the performers are so accustomed to hearing how a cadenza is going to go. And not only that, they're also obviously very in tune with the performance that they're giving. In a matter of, 3 seconds, they hear the oboist get ready to do the trill, and their instruments are up, back and ready to play. And I just think that's super cool. So just a couple of things to look forward to. Alright, we're in the coda now, and it's just terminative material, and that's going to bring the piece to a close. And that's it. Such a beautiful piece. I hope to one day maybe study it, but yeah, that's the first movement of the Mozart Oboe Concerto. Here are my sources. Yep, and that's it. Thank you.